back to our Teams in 20 series. So this is our almost weekly series where we talk about something during lunch for 20 minutes. And today that topic is Viva Engage.
Pleasure to join this series. There's been a lot of great content shared, so be sure to look over, check out the YouTube channel if you've missed any, because there's a ton of good stuff there. So we're going to talk about Viva Engage today, and what makes this one a little bit different than perhaps some of the other ones. Some of the pieces aren't very technical. Some of my tips here are more about people, because really Viva Engage is about connecting people, and providing those opportunities for engagement. I've got a little Viva Engage logo that you see on this slide here. You should be able to click on it on any slide throughout this whole thing. If something sparks your imagination, you want to go check it out. It should open the app directly for you. So in Teams. So go ahead and give that a shot if you want to. Okay, so let's get into it. Tip number one is really one of those, again, it's about people and how we think about all these different tools. We spend a lot of time talking about a lot of different tools that we have at Microsoft, and this is one of the ones where people ask why more often than any other, I think. And I think it's because they wonder why we need yet another place to have conversations. And the core of it is that what makes Viva Engage fundamentally different than any other way that you have to communicate on the platform is its openness, its transparency, its inclusion, right? It's about creating large conversations with communities of people who share interests. And it's not about kind of getting your work done day to day, but work isn't always about that, right? I probably spend about 80% of my time in Microsoft Teams, another 10% of my time in email. I know that's probably flipped for a lot of you. That's fine. But then I spend another 10% of my time in Viva Engage. That doesn't make it less valuable. It's just different. It's a different way of interacting and with the rest of my organization. So I connect with them. I amplify the things that we do, and communicators often use it for that breadth of reach. So it's about talking to the people that you don't know, not necessarily the ones that you work with every day. All right, tip number two is pin it, or ask IT to pin it for everyone. So if you were unaware, you can pin any app that you open in Microsoft Teams. Just right-click the icon in the navigation and select pin, and it'll be there. And what I have in my own Teams app is I have Chat, Teams, and Engage right next to each other so that I have all my conversations in one place. And I do mean all my conversations. I really try not to have conversations in email. It wasn't designed for that. It's not very good at it. And so anytime you're having a back and forth conversation with a group of people and it's in email, you're doing it wrong. It's just not really well designed for that. There are certain circumstances, for example, when we're crossing borders of organizations, for which email is still, one of the easier things. But my small conversations are all in chat now. My medium-sized conversations where I'm working with a team are all in Teams channels. And then when I want to have large conversations with, hundreds or thousands of people, that's when I turn to Engage to get for advice, input, and to share more broadly the things that I'm doing. Okay? So yeah, if it's not part of your navigation, make it a part. And I have them right next to each other, small, medium, and large, so that I can remember to reach out to a broader audience when that's appropriate. Okay. Next tip, find your sponsor and your community manager. Again, this is one of those people things. It's not about the technology necessarily. It's about making sure that it's set up for success, right? So if a community is established, let's say it's cat fans, right? Who cares if that fails? Like, if there's nobody that cares if it fails, then it may or may not take off depending on how cute the cat videos are. But, that's what's going to determine it. But if you have a owner of that community, so let's say it's all of the nurses in our NHS trust, right, who share a role and share some experiences and will have some thoughts rather than, collaborating on or sharing their grievances out on Twitter. Can we bring that in-house and change the nature of that conversation? And then who cares about that conversation and the engagement that happens with that particular role? Or maybe it's a site, the London site or the Manchester site. Who are the people that care about employee engagement in that context about that topic, and make them your sponsors, have them being the first people who are posting and making announcements in that community and showing that it's an official channel for people to talk about those things. Okay, some good candidates for your sponsors are leadership, our HR organizations, learning and development organizations. They're very good at wanting that kind of engagement and dedicating the resources that it would take to really foster that community, keep it alive and thriving. Okay, now some more practical tips. So one of the things you can do is post an announcement. So if you are the admin of one of the communities, one of the communities on Viva Engage, then you can post an announcement. That's a special type of post. You can use any type of post. So if you're familiar with Engage at all, you have regular posts. You also have question types, would have special features. I'll show that in a minute. You have polls. You have praise, and any one of those types can be an announcement. So what makes an announcement special is that it pushes a notification out to all of the members of that community. If it's super important, you can actually change. That's that second red arrow on the slide here. In fact, let me point it out. So this red arrow here is you can change that notification settings so that you actually override people's notifications. If it's really important and this is an official channel, doesn't mean you have to revert back to email. What this does is it actually puts out an email to them to make sure that they get that, but it doesn't mean you have to shift all of your communications back to email. You can push out the really important ones that way, make sure everybody gets it, but then most of the communications and conversations wouldn't rise to that level, right? So don't overuse it, but it's a fantastic feature. Also, note that stat that we have down here. We have some data that shows that the time for reaching all the employees when it's used properly in this way is 4.5 times faster in Engage than it is in Mail because of the different kinds of notifications that you get. Yeah, so that's what our data is showing. Okay, I mentioned this already briefly. Change up your post types. The question post type is particularly powerful. We're finding that announcements that you make that are questions get 4 times more comments than those that are just standard discussions. The different types of posts have different features and flavors to them. Questions are particularly interesting because when you are the author of the post, of the original question, or you are the admin of that community, you can mark one of the replies as the best answer, and that pops it up to the top of all of the replies. And then there's also upvoting when you have questions as well, and then the replies, the top level replies, are ordered in terms of their upvotes. So it provides a couple of different ways that you can surface the knowledge and answers to those questions. Okay. Doing pretty good on time here. We'll have some time for a few questions and answers, perhaps. So tip number 6 is about telling your story. So there's a relatively new feature to Viva Engage. It came out late last year called Storylines. If you're in the app, you'll notice at the top you have the home. That's your home feed of all the conversations that are relevant for you. Communities, where you dive into specific communities. You can see which communities you're a member of, other ones you might want to join, etc. And then there's Storylines. Storylines is really about individuals. It's about people telling their own story. And leaders resonate with this quite a bit. So if I'm the chief executive of an organization or the head of HR or whatever, I can be sharing my story of on-site visits that I've done or insights that I've had on my drive home. I can post a visual story. So if you're familiar with Instagram or Facebook at all, you understand this concept of a visual story, either an image or a short video that just communicates or, an idea or a place and point in time that you want to share. And so you can post those kinds of stories as well as kind of traditional posts to your storyline. And, the purpose here really is not everything that you want to share to this broad audience is about one of the communities that you've joined. So there might be communities for different aspects of the organization, but you have an idea that isn't related to one of those communities, or it's some work that you personally have done and you're proud of and you want to share, or a challenge you're facing, and you want to just get broader input and feedback on that. Or just share a little bit about you beyond the badge, right? And we don't have the hallways anymore. We don't have the water coolers. Many of us don't have those opportunities anymore to just bump into each other and talk about Love Island. I'm not saying post about Love Island on here, but I am saying, the photo of, of your canoe trip or whatever. If these are things that you wouldn't normally share with your colleagues over the water cooler, do it here. And you can build up a following of people who want to follow you. I will say here, since we have a minute, I have the job that I have because of Viva Engage. It was called Yammer back then, but it was because of the connections with people that I made on a platform where I could connect with people who didn't work where I worked or didn't work in my job, that I found the job that I have today. So, we might think of this as just a social tool. Think about how you got your last job. It was probably because of somebody you knew and the influence that they had. More than anything else. And so it's a powerful and important part of how we work. And in our hybrid world that we're living in now, we need different ways of connecting. And so this is one of the important reasons for storylines. All right. Tip 7 is about hosting a community event. So you've heard of live events on Teams. It still uses, you can host a live event using Teams as actually the production tool. That's what you're seeing here in the middle of the screen. But the difference is you're hosting the event. You create the event and host it on Viva Engage. So there's a conversation stream as part of that live event that lives before, during, and after the event. And that's what makes it fundamentally different than just an average live event on Teams. You also get deep analytics into how many people are viewing your event over time and so on. So there's some good reasons to host, community events through the platform rather than just having a separate Teams event. Okay. And our last tip for today is getting notifications your way. Okay, so one of the things that we hear of often when people are just starting on their Viva Engage journey is, oh my goodness, I'm getting so many emails from Viva Engage. And there's ways to change that. The reason that those notifications are being pushed out is just like when you joined Facebook, right? They needed a way to bring you back and remind you to come back. If you can remember 20 years ago when you first joined Facebook, you were getting a lot of emails, but you turned down those notifications, didn't you? Because you didn't have to be reminded. And so that's what those are for. So you can get email notifications. You can set those separately from notifications that you get in Teams when you have the Viva Engage app installed in Teams. So you can, for example, if you spend a lot of your time in Teams and you want to get notified there, make your adjustments there and shut off all of your email notifications, or vice versa. You can shut off the notifications in Teams and just have your email notifications. It's up to you how you design that. And because of that personal preference, IT actually can't, physically turn off the notifications for everybody, which is what we get asked sometimes. You need to take some ownership of how you want to be notified of those kinds of conversations, and just tune it enough so that you're getting enough notifications that it's not bugging you, but enough that it's a reminder to come back and check in with those larger conversations. Okay? So that is me. I've left a few minutes for questions. We have some sessions coming up next week, or that's 2 weeks out, it looks like. Is that right? Is that 2 weeks out?
In 2 weeks. We have a break next week, and then on May the 3rd, we have a session about well-being top tips. So make sure to join that if you can. It should be in your calendars already.
Great.
I don't know if you want to take a few questions, Chris, before I wrap up.
Yeah, so there's a question from Elena about how to navigate all these conversations. Switching to demo and everything would be take a lot of time, but let me come back to this slide real quickly to show you, yeah, there are, different kinds of conversations, and that's why I pin that app in Teams and put them right next to each other so that I can easily just click them back and forth between them, right? So if I'm having a small chat with a couple of people, I hit the chat icon. If I'm, engaging with my different teams and my channels, I hit Teams. And if I'm going out to a broader community, I hit Viva Engage. So that it's as simple as that kind of navigation. We've tried to keep it really simple that way. Okay. Success implementing a Yammer post-deletion policy under compliance portal. Wow, specific question. What sort of length would you see working best? That is such an individual question. I do wish that we had kind of some general guidance. This is the best practice or whatever. The challenge is that it really depends on your organization. There are people who rely on these community conversations and want them to be around indefinitely. There are others that put a very short time limit on it because they're in a highly regulated environment and just don't want that much data hanging around, and that's a higher priority than the value of the conversations. So it really is an individual decision, but yes, absolutely. All of the content in Viva Engage can be governed by the same kinds of compliance and retention rules that we have for SharePoint and Teams and so on. So it all sits under the same infrastructure. Right? Any other questions?
I think that's all the questions we've had so far.
Okay.
So just to wrap things up, thank you all so much for joining us today. Thank you for spending your lunch with us. I've popped in the chat a link to our survey. We'd really appreciate if you'd fill that in and give us any feedback or anything you want to see in the future. And make sure to join us on May the 3rd for Wellbeing Top Tips. That is it from us. Thank you so much for joining.
Okay, thank you.